tap. One list. Good evening, everyone. Hello and welcome to Policy Board, and thank you for fighting through the terrible weather to come here, and even bigger thank you to those who are substituting for those that weren't able to make it today. So we have, well, I feel like it's very wild, but we're not doing any chair's announcements because we don't have any members of the public. So if there is a fire, follow Dan. Otherwise, you remember the emergency evacuation procedures, filming and facilities. So we'll go straight to apologies for absence, please, Dan.
Thank you. So I've had apologies from Councillors Paul Clark, Massey, Sampson and Whitehead. Councillor Hyland is subbing for Paul Clark and Councillor Hazel Clark is subbing for Councillor Sampson.
Lovely. And declarations of interest? None? The minutes of the last meeting from the 28th of September, have you read them? Are they happy that they are correct? No changes to be made? Agreed? Lovely. Public questions, I believe we don't have any.
Yep.
We're going home in half an hour time. Right, so the first item on our agenda is the publication of revisions to the Chelmsford Local Development Scheme, which I believe Alex is presenting.
Good evening, Chair. This is a presentation of item 5 on your agenda. It's the Local Development Scheme, or the LDS for short. So the LDS is a statutory requirement set out by national planning policy on the City Council as a local planning authority. The LDS, given in Appendix 1 of the covering report, sets out what local plan related documents the City Council intend to prepare and a timetable for their production and consultation. The review of the LDS covers the period 2023 to 2028. There are 8 previous revisions, and the last of which was in 2021. So the LDS is a management tool for setting and managing the plan-making process. It is not subject to independent examination or formal public consultation. The main changes in this particular LDS review are associated with the review of the local plan, which is being undertaken currently. The review of the local plan will extend the local plan from 2036 to 2041. So the adopted plan currently runs to 2036. The LDS sets out the remaining timetable for the local plan review, including the timings of formal public consultation and submission for examination. It also summarises the evidence, resources and risks associated with the review process. Other changes to the LDS include updates to the table of adopted development plan documents. This reflects the fact that there are now 3 adopted or made neighbourhood plans. These are in Writtle, Southwood and Ferrers and Little Baddow. These are now part of the statutory development plan for the areas for which they each can cover, which are the parished areas. The Community Infrastructure Levy, or SEAL review, which was referred to in the previous 2021 LDS, has not taken place. This has not taken place due to the proposed national government review on the infrastructure levy. The SEAL review is now proposed to align with government's proposed infrastructure levy review. There are 2 new sections in this particular review of the LDS. The first refers to the policies map as a separate section. This sets out the role of the policies map, which primarily is that it covers the whole of the Chelmsford area and illustrates the sites allocated for development or protection within the local plan. The second new section refers to master plans. These were introduced as part of the strategic site policy allocations in the adopted local plan. A number of these have been agreed, and details of their purpose and a link to them is included in the report for your reference. Probably of most interest in this particular LDS review is the main change to the local plan review timetable. So this is shown on the slide in front of you. The review of the local plan has changed since the last LDS, primarily due to delays in starting and completing the issues and options consultation stage, local elections in May, and to allow time for gathering evidence-based information and engagement with service providers. It's important to be aware that this review is being considered under the current national plan-making process. This currently means that the submission of the local plan review for an independent examination must take place by the 30th of June 2025. The timetable does reflect that this is still possible and achievable. In conclusion, as stated at the beginning of this presentation, we ask the Policy Board consider the local development scheme set out in Appendix 1 and recommend it to Cabinet for approval and publication. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Councillor Jeeps.
Yes, on behalf of Councillor Whitehead, having read the report in full, there is nothing that can be seen that is controversial, as it's updated the previous version and incarnations of local development schemes. So it sets out the timetable for review of the local plan, on which a lot of work is already done by officers, and lists the work needed to be done in the months ahead. So we thank them for that work, and as such are happy that the recommendation be agreed.
Are there any other comments or feedback? Councillor Pooley, you popped your hands up just before Councillor Thorpe-Apps, who can go next.
Crash. Yeah, thank you, and thank you to officers for this. I just wanted to seek reassurance to one aspect of the timetable, which I think I've received before, but I'm not quite sure whether the timetable has continued to slip since I last asked this question. I'm conscious that the date that it's all being squeezed a bit by the need to get it through the public inquiry process and adopted by a certain time. And as you can expect from me, I'm particularly keen that the whole process involves the public in a way that they understand what's going on, believe that they have been consulted, and have time to be involved adequately. So the reassurance I'm seeking, I guess, is that the squeeze in the timetable does not significantly affect that, in your opinion.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. Councillor Pooley's comment is very valid in the sense that all the local plan process needs to ensure that it's consultative and it involves community engagement as well as consultation. And those two things are quite distinct. Because we can publish things for consultation, but actually engaging with the public is important to ensure that we maximise opportunities for people to comment and influence the local plan through the process. So what I can assure Councillor Pooley is that through our communications team, we've got a communications plan in the same way as we did for the issues and options consultation to ensure that we maximise the opportunities for engagement, maximise the opportunities for digital as well as the more traditional types of consultation and engagement. And we will be doing that within those periods of time, within the timetable that is set out on the screen. So I think our consultation periods tend to be 6 weeks. They sometimes are slightly longer. The statutory periods are 6 weeks, and we will continue to do that in accordance with our statement of community involvement, which members will be aware that we have an approved statement of community involvement that we need to adhere to, and the inspector at a future examination will ensure that we've, as I say, adhered to the requirements within the statement of community involvement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jeremy. Councillor Thorpe-Apps, did you still want to come in? And then we'll go to Councillor O'Brien after.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, actually, Councillor Pooley stole my thunder somewhat. My question was very similar to his. Section 6 of the paper talked about some of the risks to the timelines. And just looking at that submission, that June 2025 submission timeline, our office is confident that we will meet that.
Well, the short answer to that is yes. As you know, we've been through this process a couple of times, and we know what to expect. One thing I would say is that, as Councillor Pooley said, in some regards, the timetable has been our own up to this date, whereas now we have got a long date which we have to submit our plan within. So there is slight issues in relation to ensuring that we complete all of that within that time frame. And there are external factors that sometimes we cannot plan for. But for all the things that we are aware of, yes, the answer is yes. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor O'Brien?
Yes, Madam Chair, I was going to ask a similar question, just really looking at the timescale. And for those of us that have adopted neighbourhood plans, which we will have to update to kind of match this, you know, our budgeting, if we're going to go to submission in Q2 2025, we're already budgeting that now. And I just wondered, same question really is, you know, if this is the definitive, the question I really had, is there any funding available for neighbourhood plans to be updated like there was in part of their creation that we can take back?
So the government are continuing, through you, Chair, the government are continuing to provide funding opportunities for neighbourhood plans, and I believe that does apply to neighbourhood plan review. I think one thing I would say in answer to the three questions that we've had about timetable is that don't forget this is a review of the local plan. It isn't starting completely from scratch. And what you will be seeing is that there are large parts of the plan that are still completely in date and don't require any amendment. And therefore, and I think that's why the confidence in relation to that timetable has been put forward to you tonight. I think if we were in a position where we had a blank sheet of paper, then I think I would be significantly more concerned with the timetable.
Thank you. Councillor Hyland.
Thank you, Chair. On page 26 of the pack, the agenda pack, 7.1, I reported that there was a link not working. Can we just check that those links are working before they go out to the public, obviously? And I'd also like to ask about the affordable homes element. It's been reported in here 23%, I think it was, the number that came forward. And obviously, we've been trying to achieve a 35% of affordable homes. What's happening in this local plan that will help realign that, moving it more towards 35?
Okay, so if I take the last question first, if that's all right, I'll do it in reverse order. So the 23% is not the overall, it's 23% rented accommodation within 35%. So 35% is still the headline figure. In fact, the latest accommodation strategic market assessment assessment indicates that we can actually go 1% more. So we have 22% rented affordable now, and it's saying that we can get to 23. So overall, just to be very clear, 35% is likely to continue to be the affordable housing provision within the plan. And your first matter about the link, yes, I've checked that, and we've got a new link that we will put in. So apologies for that.
Yes, another one.
Thank you. So what you're telling me, Jeremy, is that within that 35 provision, the off-site provision of affordable homes or private rented homes that are called affordable are all adding to that 35 number. Is that right?
So the 35% effectively contains three elements. So the rented element, the affordable rented element, which is the one that takes people from our housing register, which is crucial for us to maintain our housing supply for those that most need it. But within that definition of 35%, there's also other tenures that are considered in planning terms to be affordable. So they are affordable housing, but they are affordable home ownership products. So they may be shared ownership or first homes, which is the government's new product, which needs to take 9% of our 35%. We have to do that. So the 22, or hopefully to be soon 23%, is the thing that really makes us ensure that we are taking and housing people from our housing register, and that's the element that we really want to ensure and safeguard.
So the 23%, the affordable private rented element is being counted in that 23%. Is that right? So that's not marked. That's not available to our housing list. That's the way I read the report. Sorry.
So on certain products, so there is a product called build to rent. Sorry, we're probably getting into a little bit of technical detail, but on a product called build to rent, the affordable element, the rented element, is a kind of is a private rented element that you're talking about. But in normal development, the 22 or 23% is affordable rent, and that is either social rent or affordable rent. That's the element that takes from our housing register. Thank you.
Councillor Soshin.
So I'm just assuming that everybody has had their say now, so I'd like firstly to thank the officers for the preparation of the report and the LDS scheme on Appendix 1. And secondly, I'd like to make the recommendation that this is sent to Cabinet for approval and publication.
And can we have a second? Thank you, Councillor Young. Are we all in agreement? Lovely. Thank you very much. And then we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, which is, I'll make sure. Amy, I believe this is your one, the Travelling Show Person Sites Planning Advice Note.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. My name's Amy Stock. I'm the Senior Housing Enabling Officer, and I'm responsible for the production of the Travelling Show Person Sites Planning Advice Note. The purpose of this item is to seek approval from Policy Board tonight to publish the draft Travelling Show Person Sites Planning Advice Note for technical consultation. To give a bit of background, the National Planning Policy Framework, the NPPF, and the Planning Policy for Travelling Sites, the PPTS, set out the responsibility for local planning authorities to identify and address the accommodation needs of different groups of the community, including travelling show people. The cultural lifestyle of travelling show people often means that accommodation in the forms of flats and houses, etc., are not suitable for this community. Travelling show people are generally accommodated on plots, or sometimes informally known as yards. Chelmsford, in partnership with other Essex local planning authorities, have commissioned consultants to identify local accommodation needs of this community through the undertaking of the Essex-wide Gypsy and Traveller Accommodation Assessment, the GTAA. This assessment establishes the number of plots required by the travelling show person community within the administrative area. The plots required through this identified through this assessment are then allocated within the Chelmsford local plan, and so in our current adopted plan there are 24 plots that have been allocated to meet this identified need for the travelling show person community. The purpose of the planning advice note then is to ensure that these sites and these plots coming forward are all going to be delivered to the same high quality standard as would be expected in any other residential provision across Chelmsford. that they're all suitable to accommodate the lifestyle associated with the travelling show person community, and that they all can facilitate easy maintenance and management to ensure site sustainability and protect the health and well-being of residents. In terms of what is included within the planning advice note, it sets out design and layout standards to be expected on any emerging travelling show person site. Aspects covered include site sizes, so this is detailing the minimum area per plot, maximum number of plots per site, and requirements for biodiversity net gain and tree planting. Site boundaries, so ensuring that plots and sites are suitably bounded with due consideration to safety, security and setting. Vehicle access and parking, ensuring that provision can accommodate the number and range of vehicles typically associated with this community. On-site services, so detailing the expected provisions of essential services, electric vehicle charging points, water efficiency standards, waste recycling facilities, on-site energy generation provisions. Suitable living and working environments, so this is addressing infrastructure provisions required to accommodate the community's way of life, with due consideration towards functionality, health, safety and resident privacy. And amenity green spaces, so detailing the form and amount required to ensure the travelling show person community have access to safe, accessible spaces to promote well-being. Also included within the planning advice note are some indicative site mock-ups to visually show how sites may be laid out to accommodate the design and layout standards. As the draft travelling show person sites planning advice note takes an advisory approach to the design and delivery of travelling show person sites, stakeholders will be invited to give their views on the draft through a 4-week technical consultation. And following this, a summary of the feedback received and any proposed amendments to the document will be taken to Cabinet. The recommendation, therefore, is firstly for the draft travelling show person sites planning advice note to be approved to go out on a 4-week consultation, and secondly for the delegation to the Director of Public Places in consultation with the Cabinet Member for Growing Chelmsford to settle any changes or amendments to the draft planning advice note prior to this consultation. Thank you, Chair.
That's a big sentence.
A lot of words.
Before I go to the floor, I just wanted to thank you, Amy, for your work on this, because it's really detailed and it really does address a gap in national guidance. And I can
Thank you. That's appreciated. Thank you.
Councillor Young.
Thank you. Can I just add my thanks to Amy for the work that's gone in this, in what I think is perhaps a first. I don't think we've seen this.
Nothing that we've not done anything like this before. There's the odd couple out there, but it's not very common at the moment. No,
that's what I thought. So I think it's really good to be doing this and to making this distinction for this group of people, many of whom have a long history within the Chelmsford area as well, families that have generations of families, and they are a very different group of people, so I do that. One of the things I was interested to hear a bit was about the consultation and who the stakeholders are that will be consulted.
Yep, so the consultation, ultimately it will be open so that anyone who'd wish to make comments can. The kind of focused element addressing stakeholders, we would send out notification to landowners, those who've promoted sites to us before, the likes of registered providers who may maintain the sites, and existing travelling communities out there, to notify them of the consultation so that they are aware and have that opportunity to comment. But ultimately it will be open and on our website, so if others stumble across it and wish to make a comment, they can.
Yes, thank you. I'm hoping that's including the Showmen's Guild of Great Britain.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Yep. Which have an Eastern Region branch. Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Councillor Thorpe, perhaps.
Yeah, a comment from Councillor Whitehead, if I may just put that forward. Councillor Whitehead says the purpose of this item is to seek approval from Policy Board to publish the draft Travelling Showperson's Site Planning Advice Note for a technical consultation. Given that the Board is being asked to approve the consultation being published, I see no problem with this. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you very much. Are there any other questions or comments before we move to Councillor Hyland?
Thank you, Chair. I noticed in the document there was a bit of an interchange between the word traveller and gypsy, and I wanted to know if there was any differentiation being made here, or are these plots available for the community that travel?
Okay, so, there is a distinction between the groups travelling show persons and gypsies and travellers. The purpose of this planning advice note is just to target travelling show persons in the form of plots. Gypsies and travellers are accommodated on pitches, and they do tend to have separate requirements and needs.
Thank you for the clarification. So there'll be a separate document then for gypsies and travellers in the future?
Difficult to say at this point.
Don't mean to ask difficult questions.
So, Councillor Harland, yes. At the moment, we, as you know, have delivered a gypsy and traveller site at Drake's Lane with our colleagues from CHP, and I think it's fair to say that we feel that that is an exemplar, and through the actual process of us actually allocating the site and being part of the team that brought that forwards, we feel that we've gained a lot of experience in that, which we probably will need to codify in a document. However, the pressing need was for the travelling showperson site, because we haven't actually delivered one of these before, and we wanted to make sure that, as I said, we codified some of the principles early on, and for us to be in control of the process rather than letting that to be in a more ad hoc way. So to answer your question, yes, it's likely that we will be providing something in the future, but there isn't that pressing need because we've just delivered one, and we won't be delivering one, another one in the very near future.
Thank you. Chair, may I ask
Sure.
one more question? Thank you. Just for a matter of detail, are the plots shared units, or are they going to be owned by a particular family? Or are they rented by a particular family, or are they interchangeable? So if a show person goes off and does a show in Scotland, is there an empty plot there for someone else to use, or is it their plot to come back to?
So we haven't defined that, so to speak, to kind of enable that flexibility. What we're anticipating based on other plots that we've seen elsewhere is that they will be kind of owned either by a single family or a troop, so to speak, but there's flexibility kind of embedded so that, for example, there could be multiple families on one site or multiple troops on one site and still retaining ownership of separate plots rather than encompassing as a whole.
Councillor O'Brien?
Thank you, Chair. Just one question. Yes, a very good piece of work. Can I ask, is there a national policy for the minimum standards that are needed for a show person's plot? Because when I first read this, I will admit, it felt all a bit gold-plated. I mean, I can't get an electric point for my flat at the moment without paying £3,500 just to get the electricity wired in, and yet we're providing everything here. Are we gold plating, or are we following a national standard that, we have to follow, so to speak?
There are no national standards out there at the moment, which was part of the issue with this. We weren't trying to gold plate it, we were trying to make sure that the standards reached what would be expected on any other residential provisions, so the likes of EV charging points as would be expected in line with our policies on a typical house or flatted development, the provision of amenity space, that sort of thing. It's just kind of bringing it up to make sure that that provision is going to provide the same quality and standard as what we're delivering elsewhere.
It's lovely to know we've got a gold-plated standard across the rest of the Chelmsford though too. Thank you.
Could I just, I mean, slightly different from Gypsy and Travellers. These aren't we're not actually providing the development itself. What we're doing is enabling the sites. So we're in development of the large strategic sites. The developer has to provide a serviced site for sale. It probably will be sale to a travelling show people or a family. So we're not actually going to be developing those sites, just to make that very clear.
Councillor Thorpe, perhaps.
Thank you, Chair. I was just wondering how this document relates to neighbourhood plans for areas that have neighbourhood plans. Neighbourhood plans aren't mentioned in here at all, and I was just looking at Section 8 on amenity. I know the Writtle neighbourhood plan talks a lot about amenity. So I was just wondering, should neighbourhood plans be referenced here, or does this document have would it have a similar weighting to the neighbourhood plan anyway, so wouldn't need to be included here? I don't know the answer, just wondering if you could clarify. Thank you.
So my feeling would be that because this is quite a bespoke document and it's dealing particularly with a group of our community and a particular design, then I'd suggest that probably it would be our normal planning policies within the local plan that would prevail. Obviously, if there were specific issues that were within a neighbourhood plan area that needed to come to the fore that were different from that, then of course that would be material in the consideration of a planning applications. What we're trying to do here is, because these are going to be developed by third parties, we want to establish some principles and get those early on to ensure that then the planning applications that come in accord with the broad framework that is set out in this document. So it's supposed to be helpful, it's supposed to be advice, it's supposed to help the travelling show people community and ourselves as decision makers to ensure that we get the best sites for that community.
Oh, yes, Councillor Walsh.
Hi. Yeah, just to add to what the other councillors have said about the quality of the report, but slightly similar question to the last one, because in the previous 4 years, I think we've had 2 master plans that have had set areas for travelling show persons. So I just wondered how this guide document or advice plan aligns with those, and whether it will align with those when they come to the planning stage.
So in terms of, because there have been a couple of master plans, yes, that have come through with kind of indicative areas set out. What we tried to do within the planning advice note, well, part of how the planning advice note came around was where these master plans came through. There were questions and queries at this stage about what, from the developers, kind of what should we be including, what should we be expecting. We thought, oh, actually, we do need to fill this gap. So that's kind of then how this document's emerged. But we have also set out within the document a kind of stages process of what we did expect at each stage. So at a master plan level, I've flicked to my page, we are generally just expecting the basic kind of outline of where it is. Oh, page 10. Yeah, page 10 on the planning advice note draft, which kind of sets out the kind of different stages. So setting out what we're expecting at master plan submission, what we'd expect to outline, and what we'd expect at reserve matters, or if there wasn't an outline at a full application. So at master plan, yeah, it would just be kind of the general, the size of the site, the number of plots to be provided, making sure, identifying the kind of the natural features. The next stage on, so following the master plans, where we're kind of at with some of them now, would then be looking at ensuring the accesses are there, the services, the on-site service provisions are there. Thank you. That there's community services and facilities within range, and then the next step would be the further detail.
Okay, yeah, no, I think that has answered it. So the ones that have gone through master plan already, this note will or this document will apply to them when they get to the next stage.
Yeah.
Okay, well, thanks.
So, Councillor Soshin.
Thank you, Chair. So I now come to, first of all, just thank the officers, particularly Amy, for the preparation of this note, which is perhaps groundbreaking. And then I'd like to come to the recommendations. So recommendation 1 is that the draft travelling show person's site planning advice note attached be approved for a 4-week technical consultation with point 2 to delegate to the Director of Public Places in consultation with a Cabinet member for growing Chelmsford to settle any final changes to the traveller show person planning advice note arising from Policy Board ahead of the technical consultation. I would like to say if any of those changes probably should be notified to the opposition spokesman as well when they're made, just so they know, but if there were such changes. So I make those proposals. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Zoshan. Can I have a second? Thank you, Councillor Pooley. Are we all agreed? Lovely. And then we move on to Councillor Robinson, who is our guest speaker today. Thank you very much for joining us. You're here to go through the item, which is refresh of Our Chelmsford, Our Plan.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah. So Our Chelmsford, Our Plan is an opportunity for this council to set out some strategic objectives to guide us over the next 4 years. And the current version was a little delayed because of the general election, but was adopted in January 2020 by full council. For those new members of the council who haven't seen it before, there are a few copies here. This is the actual printed version. It's on the website as well. And so this process is an opportunity for the council to update its strategic priorities for the next 4 years. And I'd like to thank Keith Nicholson and his colleagues for drawing up this document. As you can see, it's not a major departure from the current version. It sets out the 3 broad themes, which you will have heard me and my administration colleagues refer to on a number of occasions, that we want a greener, fairer and more connected Chelmsford. And under those 3 headings, there are 3 priorities, so 9 in total. And this is the sort of the broad framework document that sets out the overall strategic priorities. And underneath this, behind this, is a separate working document which has over 150 different objectives for different parts of the council for our 3 directorates and the 1,100 or so staff that we employ. So under a fairer and more inclusive place, key parts of that are about housing and economic growth, tackling local housing needs so that everyone can aspire to having a home that they can afford, and to help address the causes of and mitigate the impacts of homelessness. And as I said at Cabinet, this is the #1 financial and social issue that is challenging the council at the moment, and it's causing a lot of work for a lot of people. We want to promote our area as a place for investment and business and encourage the creation of high-value jobs. And it's our aspiration, which we're delivering through the master plan in the garden community, and we hope to bring forward through the review of the local plan, is to increase the number of jobs that we are creating and making provision for. So we'll be allocating land to ensure that we can that more jobs can be created in Chelmsford, so that we build genuine communities where people can live and work and play. And under a greener and safer place, as you know, Councillor Moore and the Directorate have been doing an awful lot of work on this regard, reducing the council's carbon footprint and the broader impact that we have on the wider community. There's a strong emphasis on expanding and improving the quality and accessibility of our green spaces. We are pressing to increase biodiversity, which that's always a jargon phrase, which is more bugs and animals and wildlife, so that development should benefit existing communities, and that development should leave development sites in a better state than when they arrived. And so we are pushing for at least 10% biodiversity net gain through our local plan. and we want to improve the environmental quality, attractiveness and safety of leisure and the recreational potential of public spaces, green areas and rivers and waterways. We've never, as a city or borough before, I feel we've never made enough of our river setting, and there's a lot more that we could do, which is why we set up the Waterways Working Group to look at some of those areas, and there's a lot more that we could do and hope to be able to do. Under a more connected place, health and well-being has become a very strong. Little did we know 4 years ago how much higher on the public's mind health and well-being would come as we entered and now have almost emerged from a global pandemic. And there's a very strong emphasis on enabling all our residents, adults and children, to live well and reducing health inequalities and social isolation. And part of that is by creating a network of amenities and community facilities to meet the growing needs of the community. And we want to encourage people to engage in healthy and active lifestyles. And as you know, we've also been pushing the new Chelmsford Cultural Strategy, and that is a key part of making Chelmsford a great place to live. And there's a lot more that we want to do and are keen to do to provide opportunities for people to engage in the creative environment in stronger communities. So those give you broad headings. And as you know, this administration has done its best to be open and transparent, which is why we're bringing it to you tonight before it's fully finished, to give all members an opportunity to contribute, and then take that back with any feedback that members here this evening have, so that we can then present a more final version to Council in December. So if you've got any questions or comments about things that are missing or shouldn't be there, I'm happy to look at those.
May have stunned them into silence. Councillor Jeeps.
Could I just ask one question? What do you mean by a high-value job?
It's, I mean, well-paid, I think. I mean, high-value is a bit of a jargon phrase, but one of the problems, Essex as an economy as a whole, for decades, has seen a bit of a brain drain, for want of a better word, that an awful lot of people commute out of Chelmsford, sort of 15,000 people a day leave our city to work elsewhere, because a lot of people feel that there aren't the high-paid jobs in Chelmsford. And if we can encourage the development of the high-tech industries like Teledyne and BAE Systems, and encourage them, and hopefully encourage other companies like those to relocate to Chelmsford, then we can have more well-paid jobs in Chelmsford, rather than people feeling they have to commute out of Chelmsford.
Thank you.
Councillor O'Brien.
Yes, just one ask on the waterways and the river, which I like. Can we make sure we include the Crouch as well, and not just the Cam, the Wid and the Chelmer?
Yeah, you're absolutely.
Thank you.
I always say that we have, well, at least 4 rivers. I mean, there's a few streams and brooks and waterways as well, but we have 4 rivers in the district. Well, yeah, have some new ones, yeah.
Before we go over to Councillor Pooley, Keith would just like to make a comment on that point.
So it may be before you were councillor, certainly on the policy board, but last year the policy board agreed a improvement plan for the rivers and waterways in and around Chelmsford, which includes all those rivers. And I think what you'll find when the actions emerge from this plan, to support the plan, some of the things that have previously been agreed, strategies that are now in place that weren't in place before, will feed the actions and feed the priorities. So it'll close that loop down. So I think the actions will be driven by things that the council's already considered. We're matured to the next stage of the plan, I think. Yeah.
Thank you, Keith. Councillor Pooley, if you'd like to come in.
Thank you, Chair, and thanks for all the work that's gone into this so far. A couple of very general remarks. It's unsurprising, and in fact, in many ways, welcome when you said, Councillor Robinson, that it doesn't differ greatly from the content of the previous document, because a lot of the ambitions that were in our Chelmsford Our Plan 4 years ago were longer term than just 4 years and are ongoing. So to that extent, this clearly reinforces some of those and underlines their importance over time, as well as simply within the 4-year council period. I think the other general comment that I would make is, and it's referred to occasionally by use of the word enabling, and that is that we highlighted 4 years ago, for maybe in greater depth than before, that there's no way in which this council can do all of the things that it wants to do itself. We haven't got the money, we haven't got the manpower, we haven't got the expertise, we haven't got the staff to do everything that we want to do. So many of the goals that are within this document are goals which are already shared with other organisations within Chelmsford or need to become so. And I think to that extent, you mentioned the health and well-being progress that's been made. That provided a really good model for how this can work. That in evolving a strategy or a series of action plans for a particular interest in the council, what emerged was a massive strengthening of the groups in Chelmsford that are involved in that, in those objectives, formally within the Chelmsford Health and Wellbeing Group. And I'd like to see that that tendency, which that exemplar, followed through to a more formal recognition of the role of that other groups play together in the cooperation between groups in housing, in waterways, in all of the other areas that we're thinking about. I think that's the way in which we'll see things done, despite get done, despite the fact that we can't do everything ourselves.
Yes, you're absolutely right, but we have to enable and empower people because we can't do everything ourselves, and that's the better approach anyway, that leads to better decision making. And on your first point about, it's a long-term plan. On the fairer, the government uses the words levelling up, but I'm not quite sure if they know what that means. But if we want to make long-term change, it takes a long time. It's going to take a few more years before the council itself is carbon neutral, and we need a wider society to move in that direction as well. So yes, that's a long-term ambition. We've now planted 70,000 trees as part of that plan to green our environment. And on longer lives, health and well-being, people sometimes forget that there are some significant pockets of deprivation in Chelmsford, and if we want to close that healthy life's gap between about 7 or 8 years between of life expectancy between some areas in Chelmsford, then that will need long-term investment in stronger communities and that wider health and well-being plan, as you mentioned, which I'm sure Mr. Brooks will make sure that his previous team will look after.
Sorry, if I could just add one thing, forgive me. What I wanted to say is that apart from the fact that it follows through from the last one and follows on from, of course, of necessity, it's become more ambitious. Even if we didn't want it to be more ambitious, the increasing of the problems, for example, in housing, and the increase in government requirements, for example, in addressing the carbon neutral issue and other things, the targets that we are setting ourselves in carrying forward the last 4 years have inevitably, by definition, become more ambitious. And that's a good thing, not a bad thing.
Thank you, Councillor Pooley. And we had Councillor Hyland.
Thank you, Chair. Interesting that you say it's expanding. What you think, when I looked at the document from last time, you had 14 objectives. This time you've only got 9 objectives. So actually it looks like it's shrinkage, or maybe you've ticked them off, you've done them, right? Actually, what I think is missing from the document that you've provided so far is a review of how you've done. Like a summary page to say, you know, this is what we've excelled at, and this is what we've still got to do. Because I think there was a document that went to the Overview and Scrutiny Committee in October 22, I think it was, which was a spreadsheet that showed the 124 items and some sort of measurement. Now, the document that you're presenting here still fails to show some sort of measurement. What's my target for this particular element? And because I think if I just look again at the old document, it says what we will do and what success looks like. Those two columns, you've got them in front, you know them well. And below there is what are the expected outcomes. And I think you failed to answer that question at all in the last document. And I thought this time round, a review would go, these are the outcomes that we've achieved so far, and this is our new ambition.
Yeah, okay, that's a possibly fair point. And I think you kind of half answered your own question by drawing attention to the report that went to overview and scrutiny. And I'm sure Councillor Jeeps will hold us to account as the months future meetings, as you mentioned, that as I said in the introduction, that operational side, which sits below this, sets out those detailed. And I think that's where you can judge whether those things have been done or not, because in that operational plan is much more specific. I mean, this document sets out a broad vision, and you're absolutely right that it's quite deliberate that there are 9 rather than 14, because it's a framework, and that people tend to talk in threes because it's difficult to remember more than 3 things at a time. So we've got 3 headings with 3 subheadings each. But there's still that, as you say, there's that 150 or 160 sub-objectives. There's always the danger that if you do look to the past, you become a pat on the self-congratulatory pat on the back, rather than setting a clear vision for the future. And often people want to know where you're going. There's often been said that in politics, the public don't do gratitude. There's no thanks for what has gone before. People just want to know what's coming next. So yeah, this is about a direction of travel, and it's, as Councillor Pooley says, it's got a long way to go beyond the next 4 years.
Yeah, I think it's important depends on your readership of this document, and if it's the general public, they want to know where you are. So what you've done in the last 4 years and what you plan to do. I think setting a baseline within this type of commentary document will be very powerful for the residents of Chelmsford, but it's just my input to you.
Thank you very much. And I'm glad we came here so that we could receive your views. As I said, we wanted to make sure that all parties got an opportunity to contribute.
And Keith would like to come in on that point.
So just to give you some reassurance, so this is the framework to allow more detailed action planning, to be, delivered. So we're taking the feedback at this stage on the framework, sets the ambition, the direction, the priorities. Obviously, there's a lot of action planning that will follow that, and some of that action planning, I'm sure, will be captured when it goes to full council in December. So that's the process. And I think you shouldn't be in any way concerned about the level of ambition of this plan. Some things have been merged together in order to make it more succinct and more strategic in its its language and its ambition. So there's not, don't use the fact that it's gone from 14 priorities down to 9 priorities as any measure at all about what the plan seeks to achieve, because you have to look at the detail rather than the numbers.
Go on, Councillor Hyland.
Thank you. And I think your point is well made. I think the spreadsheet that was previously provided to overview and scrutiny demonstrated a subjective response to some of the objectives and the actions that were being taken, and it would need to be more objective, really measurable. So that's why I talk about having a baseline and ensuring you know what your target is and where you are between the target, from the baseline and to the target. So I think perhaps there's work to do on the detail of the document as opposed to the headline, pretty words.
That's what a vision is, though. headline of pretty words to give you a direction that you build underneath. Are there any more? Is there any more feedback before we move on to the next item on the agenda? Councillor Social.
Well, just as by way of recommendation, we note the board has reviewed these papers, and my fellow colleagues have provided feedback to...
Sorry, Councillor Social, to interrupt. Councillor Young just wants to come in with
Sorry,
another...
I just wanted to...
If that's okay before we close off this
Councillor
item.
Robinson here to say something about working groups, because the working groups of the policy board also help to deliver the...
So 4 years ago we set up a number of working groups on a cross-party basis to look at some of these strategic priorities, so you'll get your opportunity to look at some of the detail when we kind of reform and set up again the working groups. I mentioned particularly waterways is one area, but that needs a long-term look, as does, of course, housing policy. We need to look at that because, as Councillor Pooley said, housing has got little do we know how big of an issue it was going to be compared to just a couple of years ago. So, yeah, the working groups will continue, slightly reconfigured.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Sorry to interrupt you, Councillor Social.
Yeah, thank you. So just...
More hands, sorry, we're going to... Sorry, Councillor Walsh, please do go ahead.
No, I think one good thing that it's quite good to see in this, and I know it was in the previous document as well, is a bit closer, is promoting our area as a place for investment and business location. And I think that probably would be something that we would work with as Councillor Pooley described, partnership organisations. But it's quite good and quite positive to see that in the document as well.
I'm going to check before I go back to Councillor Social. Is there any further feedback? No. Councillor Social.
Thank you, Chair. The third attempt. So we note the work of the board in reviewing this plan as it's got so far, and provided various feedback that we've heard tonight on the ambitions, direction and priorities in the framework that will guide the refreshment of our Chelmsford Hour plan, so as to inform the further development of the plan and associated action plan. I so recommend.
Thank you very much. Do we have a second? A joint from Councillor Pooley and Councillor Young. Do we all agree? Yep. Lovely. Thank you very much. And then as we move on to the last item on the agenda, so thank you, Dan, very much for including this, the Chelmsford Policy Board work programme. So that gives us a bit of a forward plan. I think, much of our time will be taking up with the review of the Chelmsford local plan and the preferred option consultation. Are there any questions from anyone in the room around the work programme or any concerns? No? Lovely.
Sorry, probably in about March the 14th, as Councillor Stephen Robinson mentioned, we'll probably be talking about an update on working groups by that stage, probably.
Sure, thank you. Hopefully even sooner, who knows. So we have, are there any urgent business? Is there any urgent business? That probably makes more sense grammatically. No? Okay. Thank you very much for joining. I said half an hour, but an hour is not bad. So I'm sure security will be very happy with us, and our officers can go home and enjoy the rest of their evenings. Thank you very much for coming, and see you next time.